This episode is being brought to you by our great friends over at Profi 2020. Profi is a full-service dental CPA firm that provides bookkeeping services, monthly financial reports, managerial accounting services, and proactive tax service to growth-oriented dentists around the country. Profi was born in a dental practice out of their owner's frustrations with the dental accounting industry. Chris Sands actually managed a dental practice early in his career, learning the business from the ground up. During that time, he found that it was nearly impossible to get thorough financial reporting for the practice and even more difficult to get any kind of proactive guidance. That's when he and his business partner, CPA Brent Sonnier, decided to fix it for themselves. Profi 2020 is proactive in a notoriously reactive industry. Most accounting firms, especially in dentistry, deal only with the past. Profi provides detailed reporting, growth-oriented advice, and dental-specific strategies to their clients to ensure that they are positioned for healthy long-term growth. On a personal note, I can definitely endorse Profi as my CPA firm of choice. And the 2 years that I've been with them have been the best in regards to organization and implementing advanced strategies to decrease my tax liability. If you'd like to get started or learn more, schedule your free financial x-ray and get half off the onboarding cost for being a listener of the Dentalpreneur podcast. Just go to Profi, Profi 2020.com/DSI. That's Profi2020.com/DSI. Hey doc, did you know that greater than 50% of dentists surveyed wish they would have selected a different profession? As someone who has had the privilege of getting to speak to thousands of dentists every year, I know that a main source of frustration and dissatisfaction in our profession comes from the feeling of being stuck in toxic, unprofitable, and chaotic environments each and every day. But if you've listened to this podcast for any length of time, you know that there's another much brighter side to what the miserable majority in dentistry is experiencing. On Friday, December 2nd, I'm going to be taking a small, intimate group through a brand new, potentially career-changing workshop. The Dental Business Breakthrough is an intensive, hands-on, one-day workshop that will give its attendees the knowledge and tactical plan to create significant growth in their business acumen, systemization, profitability, and personal development. Armed with a new perspective and skill set, those who complete this course will walk away with a clear vision, benchmarks, and action plan that will help them to realize their full potential in their professional careers and personal lives. For over a decade, I've coached thousands of dental professionals on how to evolve to black belt level in areas of leadership, systemization, team culture, overhead, and cash flow control. Many of our past and current members have significantly increased their take-home income, experienced double-digit practice growth, and decreased the stress and chaos in their practices, all while decreasing the amount of time spent at the chair. Specifically, we're going to be covering the key performance indicators that drive practice efficiency and growth, how to analyze financial reports, recognize areas of opportunity, and set benchmarks for increased opportunity. How to systemize your practice to maximize efficiency and flow while decreasing chaos and redundancy. How to create an operations manual that your team will actually utilize on a daily basis. The exact formula for mastering the patient experience, creating lifetime relationships, and maximizing lifetime patient value. How to drive revenue to maximize profitability and decrease fixed expenses. Recognizing the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to decreasing variable expenses. How to develop into a world-class leader without falling into the micromanaging trap. And much, much more. If you guys are interested in attending this exclusive small group workshop in beautiful San Diego, California, make sure you go to dentalsuccessevents.com to register and for more details. That's dentalsuccessevents.com.
The Dentalpreneur Podcast. Okay, doctor, it's time to put down that handpiece. You're listening to the show dedicated to helping dentists get their lives back. It's time to decrease your stress, increase your profitability, and regain your passion. Now introducing your host, Dr. Mark Costas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Costas. What is up, my friends? All right. I am stoked, as always, because I'm hanging out with two friends. One of my friends is actually in Brazil as we speak. The person that recently went viral on my Instagram and on my TikTok, and that is Dr. Dan Briskey. What's up, Dan? How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, what's up, Mark? Thank you for making a small spectacle of me. It was very, very, very appreciated.
I teased out the most controversial thing that you said the entire time in our entire interview, and that was, and I used it as a headline too.
I liked it. I got like 600 likes, so I appreciate that.
I know, it's crazy.
More than most people like me, so I like that.
I think what people were liking. Well, here, let me digress a little bit. So, Dan and Taher and I did a video, and we were talking about surgery and all the things that these guys are so badass at. And we were talking a little bit about Dr. Briskey's background, and he was sharing how his dad who is a dentist, suggested that he not go into dentistry. And Dan said, well, I decided to go into dentistry. And then I asked him point blank, I said, so you think that if I want my kids to become dentists, that I should tell them not to become dentists? And then Dan's like, worked for me. And I was like, all right, I will do that. And the headline that I used on the Instagram short was, or my Instagram reel was, don't become a dentist. And of course, everybody that's a dentist that's part of my Instagram's like, yeah, don't be a dentist. I'm going to like that. I'm going to like that headline.
Reverse psychology is extremely powerful. It really is.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. So if I hit my kids up around between 13 and 15, which is when, they're thinking that they know a lot more than dad, I'll just be like, oh, this is a bad idea, man. Don't become a dentist. And they'll be like, that's it. I'm going to become a dentist because dad told me not to. So also on with us today is Dr. Taher Doon, the other co-founder of the Colorado Surgical Institute. What's up, Taher? How you doing today, my friend?
Good, man. Just on lunch in between a clinical day and kind of wrapping up everything before Thanksgiving hits.
I love it. So this is great. Check this out. I am in my scrubs, my black Neodent scrubs. Dan Briskey is in his Colorado Surgical Institute scrubs.
Yeah, and Neodent bottoms, CSI uppers.
Nice. And then Taher, I see you're in your Neodent scrubs. So we are all surgical today, guys. We are all surgical. Very, very nice, in separate parts of the world. So Dan, tell us why you were in Brazil. What's going on with you today, man?
So the reason I came to Brazil is I'm taking my second Zygoma training class, basically. And what I found out was throughout the first one that I did, I just didn't have the really confidence to go home and, slang zygos every day. Right? We can save some cases, but the majority of the cases we just still didn't feel comfortable with. So came down here to do a lot of live patient Zygoma surgeries with pterygoids. That way, any case that comes in the hands of myself, Dr. Doon, or CSI in general, that we can save them and we can prevent the patient from an expensive trip to the specialist.
I love it. So tell me, actually, first of all, let's start with you critiquing the course. How has been your experience so far with your instructors?
Pretty good. So one of the biggest things that I appreciated was the hands-on is one-on-one per room. So every two students that are in one room, which are assisting each other for the live surgeries, there's one instructor, which is amazing. For such a complicated surgery, it is definitely nice to see, if you do need some extra support, that they're there for you.
Okay, so full mouth implants and full mouth implant restoration is something that we teach at the Colorado Surgical Institute. When is it necessary to do a pterygoid or a Zygoma?
So a great question, because I want to express my feelings on this topic, actually. So what I've always felt for a long time now is there's all-on-4 procedure, right? Now, all-on-4s historically have a great success rate. And right, that's like 97% over 10 years. Do they work? Yeah, but they will fail. It's just a matter of when, right? So if you have 4 implants and you lose your back one, now the patient doesn't have any teeth, right? So all on 4, none on 3. So now the patient has no teeth, and they have to go to the specialist to get a Zygoma or pterygoid placed. That's why nowadays we adopted more of all on 6 principles. So the minimum number of implants that we recommend placing is 6 implants. If you can't do 6 and you need to do all on 4, at that point, I'd still recommend doing lateral sinuses. That way, later down the road, the patient can have an extra implant placed. And then, a few years into your training, if you're going to be really serious about doing these implant procedures, definitely a full believer that you need to learn how to save your cases with a Zygoma implant or a pterygoid implant. Zygoma implant will go into the Zygoma bone or the cheekbone. Usually starts around the second premolar all the way through the canine area, kind of the spread that you could put a Zygoma in. That will save your most distal implant on an all-on-4. But with the pterygoid implant, if you lose your distalmost implant as well on the all-on-4 style, you can put a longer cantilever and add an implant, which is basically at the tuberosity. Right behind the tuberosity is where the sphenopalatine bone is.
And does the all-on-4 typically fail after 10 years or so because of accumulated forces on too few implants?
Definitely. Yeah, it definitely can. The problem is, like, a lot of people will place not long enough implants or big enough implants, right? Like an all-on-4, all-on-6, 10, 11.5 millimeter implant isn't really a long stable implant for the future. So when you're placing implants or all-on-4s and you really want this thing to last, like, you should be going 16, 18 millimeters. And we need good spread over to the second premolar. But if you're getting, first premolar spread on an all-on-4, that thing is going to for sure fail someday. It's just a matter of time. Gotcha.
All right. So you actually, Dan, you brought up something interesting that I want to push on a little bit. And that is that you walked away from a continuing education course where you initially got exposed to pterygoids and Zygoma implants. And when you got back to the clinic, you didn't feel comfortable enough kind of to do it and integrate it into the curriculum of Colorado Surgical or into, the treatment of your patients, which happens to a lot of us. So what I kind of wanted to focus on today with Taher and Dan was the number of people that actually take the time and make the financial investment and the investment away from their practices and eliminating production for 2 or 4 days, the cost of travel and lodging, time away from family and stuff. They make the sacrifice to get advanced clinical training, but they don't actually integrate it into their office. And I'm going to raise my hand right now as a person that's guilty of this on many occasions. It took me 2 implant courses before I placed one in private practice, in my practice, without the comfort of the mentor standing over my shoulder. Now I do them quite comfortably. And then, I have to admit that I've gone through several attempts at myself and my team getting trained in sleep dentistry, and I've never integrated it into my practices for a number of different reasons. So I'm going to start with you, Taher. Why do you think that it is that so few or so many people, a higher percentage than we would expect, don't ever integrate the advanced clinical procedures that they are learning about into their practices?
Yeah, and I appreciate you, sharing your personal experience with that as well. I mean, I think we're all victim of going to a course. We have these aspirations of implementation, and then we just don't do it for various reasons. There's friction at so many different points. Excuse me. So, I mean, it's like the implementation for the team. Do we have the time to sit and train the team members on everything we want to implement?
Yep.
It's the confidence factor too. It's like, hey, now these are patients who are entrusting me with money and their time, and they're patients of the practice for a long time. And there's this connection component where you feel a little scared to sometimes take that leap on them. And then also the whole thing of like, do I manage post-ops, and am I qualified and skilled to handle the complication? Even if it's a 3% chance it happens, like that's sometimes that percentage in it itself is inhibiting people from taking the step forward. So one thing we've done at Colorado Surgical Institute is we do follow-up calls and text messages and Zoom calls with our attendees after the fact. And we're actually finding, We've talked in the past about Amanda and Courtney from Michelle's group, or Nick Winter, or several other attendees, and they'll do Zoom calls with us and text us screenshots, and we just follow up and tell them like, hey, your plan is good, or your plan's 95% there, just calibrate this one thing and then go get after it and contact us after the fact. Because I think the mentorship after the fact and the reassurance after the fact, while you're trying to implement in real time, is super critical to implementation.
I agree with you. 100%. Some person or one instructor that we could take, the lead from is Dr. Aaron Nicholas, who actually teaches a didactic course, but he travels around the country teaching it in different areas. It's hands-on and didactic, where you're actually working on molars. It's a 1-hour molar root canal crown and bridge course. And he has an ROI challenge. So he's gamified this, right? So he says, all right, whoever, contacts me first, with, having made back the money from this course, wins this ROI challenge. Then he has a little prize and a little recognition. Like many times people have gone back, and the second patient, the day that they got back on Monday from his course, have done, a molar root canal buildup and crown when they were never able to do that. Whether or not it was an hour or not, they've actually already recovered their investment for that course the second hour they were back to the practice. So I think that's ingenious. It's just one way to kind of hold, attendees accountable to actually focus on, pay attention, and know that, hey, I'm going to actually be performing this surgery or performing this procedure when I get back into the practice. I will say Dr. Sean, we won't give his last name, but he's in Denver, and we all know he's got an Irish last name. He's come to Colorado Surgical and has been like, I really need to get some experience with these lateral sinus lifts because I have 4 of them on my schedule next week. That's his way of making sure that he's going to pay attention. He's going to get his hands on as many with the mentors in place, watching over, because he knows he's going to be by himself Monday morning, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of the following week. So, I think that's a very cool way to do it as well. This episode is being brought to you by my favorite new dental lab, Next Level Dental Lab. If you're looking for the highest quality craftsmanship, concierge level customer service, and an extremely competitive price, look no further. Next Level is the lab for you. Here are just some of the many benefits you'll realize when you switch to Next Level. Just an 8-day turnaround time on digitally scanned cases. Free FedEx shipping with all fixed cases. Thorough case communication via email with high quality pictures. A doctor's portal that allows you to track the status of your cases, add your clinical preferences, and even pay for your invoices. And real humans that actually answer the phone to provide incredible customer service anytime from 9 to 5 in the Eastern time zone. And much, much more. If you're ready to decrease your frustration associated with your current lab, significantly decrease your fixed and removable prosthetic overhead, and take your lab to the next level, just go to nxtlvldentallab.com or call 877-800-2848. Mention the Dentalpreneur podcast and get your full zirconia crowns for just $65 per scanned unit. And DSN members pay only $58 per scanned unit. Once again, nxtlvldentallab.com or call 877-800-2848. Dan, any further kind of strategies that you have to make sure that people are increasing their likelihood of engaging in the new clinical procedures that they're learning about?
Yes. How I've learned to adapt mine was there's a time and place for everything, right? Or like a certain flow that I feel like you should go through to adapt, like even like surgical procedures, right? Whether or not there's lots of mysteries, I like to call it. So let's say you start off with a tooth and now you can take simple teeth out, right? But then you don't know how to take out the surgical extraction, right? But then you solve that problem. Then you move to a wisdom tooth. But then you move to a single implant, and then you move to a full arch, and then you move to a Zygoma. There's a certain time and place where your brain just doesn't really register it as much, but how you can speed up that learning curve is to just go see as many surgeries as you can, right? So let's say you're even placing some implants. If you go observe a full arch course, observe a Zygoma course, your brain's going to go, oh my God, like I get it all of a sudden, right? These little mysteries are going to click in your head and they're going to be, solved. And you go home, even though that course you may have taken was a little bit one step above you, but by the time you get home, you feel infinitely more comfortable. And that really speeds up your learning curve. And that's kind of how I adopted these things. So even if you're not ready, say for example, as a Zygoma class, but you take a full arch class, boom, right? And now all of a sudden you go home and your surgical times are an hour faster.
Yeah, I love that.
That's an awesome advice. When I was in corporate, I found the oral surgeon around and I went to his office and I watched him do wisdom teeth. And so I got tips and tricks on how to do it faster because you're just watching someone who's been doing it for a decade and they have the muscle memory to do all this stuff and they just do it like it's second nature. And then you're sitting there taking a page of notes and then you fast forward in your career a year or two and it's muscle memory in your hands as well. So that was a really good advice from a shadowing observation perspective.
And then it clicks in your head again, like, dang it, that dental school lied to me. I can do it. It's not as hard.
I think we got a next meme or whatever, Instagram.
Yeah, for sure. True. I'm gonna borrow a term from our mutual friend, Alistair McDonald, and he uses this term accountability loop. And he was actually talking about the frequency of which the owners of dental practices that send their associates to courses like this and never get a return on investment, or pay for a didactic course or some sort of membership like DSN or Spear or something and never realize the ROI. And what he explained to me was very, very commonsensical, right? I mean, of course, Alistair always just kind of hits you over the head with common sense. And the fact that you've never thought of it yourself is embarrassing sometimes, but it's so true. Like if there is just a simple accountability loop about certain things, whether or not it's you holding your associate accountable or you holding yourself accountable, it's like, okay, I'm going to actually keep track. And before I actually leave for this thing, I am going to say, I am going to do X number of procedures in the next quarter. And I'm not just going to hold myself personally accountable for that. I'm actually going to hold the instructors accountable for that and share that with them so they can share in the accountability and the pressure that they need to put on me to make sure that I get this done. They're going to share that accountability with their boss if it was their practice owner that actually sent them to the course, or if they or the owner of the practice themselves. We're really big about accountability groups inside DSN. Get a handful of your buddies that are actually attending the course with you or not to hold you accountable. Just like, when you're running that marathon, whether or not you're running it with a friend, you could tell a handful of people like, hey man, you got to give me some shit if I'm not running 12 miles, in a pop in the next, 4 weeks. So that accountability loop is big. And I think we overlook that a lot of times. We just go and we say, hey man, of course I'm going to do this procedure because I've spent all this money. I've made all these sacrifices, but a lot of times it just doesn't happen because we're not bringing other people into this accountability loop.
I think you hit the nail on the head when it comes to the accountability. I think when we talk about DSI, the Dental Success Institute, and the training and the business coaching, I mean, that's how we leave every coaching call is like, hey, here's your accountability and action items for your next 2 weeks. And then you do a follow-up call with the next coach. And it's like, it seems so logical. Well, why don't we have accountability within the clinical CE that we do? And so that's why I like that Colorado Surgical Institute is born out of Dental Success Institute. It's because now we're taking the accountability component, applying it to the clinical world. And that's, I think, why some of our attendees are seeing like these really good results is because they're coaching clients and we keep them accountable from a clinical perspective as well. But yeah, it seems so simple, but you need a coach to drive you in the right direction and stay with you after the course. Because if you meet someone for 3 days and then you do a course and then you never see them again, it's hard to stay motivated if you're not kind of in touch with a bunch of people who are at the course.
For sure. Hey, Dan, I'm going to go back to you, and I'm going to circle back around to this clinical thing. First of all, I want to say that it's refreshing and very cool to be able to say, hey, the guy, one of the guys that I think is like the studliest surgeons in the world, you and Taher, actually continue to, sharpen your saw and master your craft. So the fact that you are at clinical CE across the world right now, that to me is cool. That's not like, oh, this guy isn't all that because he still hasn't mastered pterygoids and zygomas. You already do them, but you're still getting advanced training. So what I want to kind of allude to is the fact that when people come to Colorado Surgical or any other surgical course, any other clinical course for that matter, they look around and they're like, oh man, I'm super intimidated. This guy has 1,000 implants under his belt. This guy has 10,000 implants under their belt. They've done 100, all on 6 courses, restorations this year. And this is my very first one. And by the end of the course, they're like, oh man, I can do this. I can actually do this. And it's an accumulation of skill and confidence that has to take place in order for you to make that jump into no implants to single implants to multiple implants to now hybrids or whatever. You are now surrounding yourself with people that have a lot more experience in pterygoids and zygomas, and potentially some of the other students with you have your level of skill or maybe a little bit less experience or a little bit more experience. But here you are in a learning environment again. What does that feel like? And how comfortable are you jumping right back into it and giving this a shot? And what are you going to do differently than you did before?
Nice. It's a really, really, really good question. It felt really odd sitting in a classroom, right? Again, and someone else is talking to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's very humbling, right? Then you meet some of these doctors in Brazil and you're like, holy smokes, they can close their eyes and throw a Zygoma implant in across the room, right? It's like, wow, these guys are absolutely incredible. This is very, very humbling.
I was going to ask you again, or I will restate the question based on your previous learning experience. And you don't need to critique or even mention who your previous learning experience was. You learned to put together a certain armamentarium and the certain level of clinical steps to get to the end result. Now you're learning a different way. You said you've gained confidence. What's different between the two ways that you were taught and the method at which you will, arrive at this desired end result?
Yep. I think the biggest two ways are, I think the instruction just taught it from a little bit of a different mindset. I feel like not everyone will agree with one instructor, right? Or the style that person describes something, which is why I love teaching with Dr. Dune, because if I can't get something through to someone, Dr. Dune will get something through to someone, right? Because everyone can just click a little bit differently. So I think one of the very, very cool parts about going to, what I would call a more successful course, in terms of my learning for this type of style, is I learned 4 different instructors' ways of doing things. And they all added up to me, it just clicking in my head and me saying, oh my God, like, how did I not realize this before? And now this is easy, like a little light switch goes off, right? I think also too, a big part of it is doing CE with your friends or partners, because when you have someone there that you're next to and you feel comfortable next to them, right? And you're really just kind of feeding off of them. Hey, is this in the right direction? Am I placing this in the right spot, right? That person's going to be honest with you, and they're not really trying to compete with you. But I feel like when you kind of partner up with someone that maybe not, your kin or, a good friend of you, that you're going to be secretly kind of competing against them, right? Mm-hmm. And then when you compete, you don't learn. But when you feel comfortable and you have multiple opinions, you learn very fast.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Okay. This is going to be my last topic. And then I'm going to let you, Dan, go back to learning how to be a badass surgeon, and you, Taher, go back and do the surgeries that you're teaching us all how to do after your lunch break here. So what I'm going to talk to next, Taher, and I'll focus this question to you, is after all the glory and after all, the implants are placed, after all the workups are done and the planning is done, implants are placed, the provisional restorations are seated. We have the after awesome tear jerking moments of the before and afters with our patients. Very, very special time. And then everybody goes home, the dust settles, you go back to being a dentist and a surgeon in your practice, and then you have to deal with all the post-ops after that. And that's when things aren't always as glamorous as the students see. It goes beyond just that transformational video, because a lot of times even the people that love their smiles and are crying and are so grateful, there's going to be complications. So that is what I think is so beautiful about Colorado Surgical, is because it's taking place in an actual dental office. So we know that the patients are getting great care, not necessarily that they're not getting great care if you go to an overseas course, but you kind of just lose touch and you're not quite sure what happens to these patients after your implants are placed. So Taher, tell us about, dealing with the post-ops. What are the most common issues that you face in a kind of a advanced surgical course like we have, as far as post-op complications, and how do you work those into your day?
Yeah, really good question. I had Clint Metcalf, who came to one of our earlier courses, and his patient was Bonnie. Clint still texts me like, hey, shoot me a video from Bonnie. So next time Bonnie's on the schedule, I'm going to get a video and shoot it over to Clint so he can see his work after the fact. And it's cool because Bonnie doesn't like anybody really in the world. And when I say, hey, Dr. Metcalf, who did your surgery, wants you to do a video, he lights up, he changes, he's a different person, he's happy on video. I'm like, all right, where's this guy? And well, how do you have this connection? There's a connection that's formed between the provider and the patient because you've created something for them that's like so special. Post-op complication wise, mainly it's just bite adjustments. Really? It's literally like, oh my gosh, like I do a lot of bite adjustments. I've done 3 today from Colorado Surgical. We check with articulating paper because like the thing is, once you're done and they're in this disclusion and they have this TMD issue going on, and then you get the teeth out of the way, then the condyle seats and the ligaments and the muscles and everything are kind of calibrating again. You give them new teeth to where they used to be. Well, they're comfortable. And then the condyle starts seating and you start just adjusting things and dialing them into centric relation. So we just dial the bite in, getting the upper perfect. It's not that hard. You just have to make sure you hide a transition line properly, meaning you have enough bone reduction occurring. One of the number one rookie mistakes we see is bone reduction issues. Yeah. Number 2 is broken screws. It's a lot of people, when I read the posts and threads on DSN, they're like, oh my gosh, I got a broken screw. And now, I'm taking broken screws out in like 60 seconds. So it's one of those things. It's like in the beginning, it causes you to lose stomach lining when you see that on your schedule, and then you deal with it 5 or 10 times, and you know how to handle it. And it's just another day at the office. So broken screws, adjusting the bite, broken prosthetics. Patients don't always do what they should, even though you tell them what to do. So then they're chewing something they shouldn't be. Break the prosthetic. The cool thing with 3D printers is the patient will call. My 3D printer has it out in an hour and a half, and we swap it out. So I think a lot of the things that were scary before for us, and it's mainly prosthetically speaking, isn't that big of an issue now that we have technology that helps us do what the prosthodontists and surgeons and stuff said was scary back in school. And then, God forbid you have an implant fail, you typically aren't having 12, let's say it's one arch. You're not having 6 implants fail. You have 1 implant that fails. And so you take it out, you clean it up, and you drop another one in the same site. Now, if the site's gone, well, you're still over-engineered, so you just put a bone graft in and live to fight another day. So managing the cases is easier and it's less scary than I ever thought it would be. Now, granted, I've been doing this procedure for a decade now. Yeah. So with that said, some things are easier, but just for everyone listening, it's not as bad as you think it is. You got to get some repetition and learn and lean on mentors. Lean on friends who have gone through the same experience, like Dr. Briskey said. It's like being the newbie. You're going to find that the experienced people, the vast majority of them, have been newbies or all have been newbies at one point, and they're rooting for you because they've been in your shoes and they want to support you.
Yeah. Great answer, man.
Can I add one more thing in there?
Of course.
So I think when we do a surgery, like an all-night surgery in terms of complications, it always comes down to like not following the cookbook, because there's steps, right? You have to go to 1 to 10 or 1 to 20. But what happens is when you get stressed out, or you think you have a little bit more of a false sense of confidence as well, you start to skip steps, right? And when you skip steps, you don't end up in the end result, which is where you want to be. And the last thing we always see is suturing. The suturing is actually probably one of the other biggest post-op complications we see. Nowadays, we have checklists and we go around and check every single room. And nowadays, I'll probably pick up the scissors and I'll cut out the sutures for half of the rooms because they're just not sutured right. Because Dune and I we'll have to field those post-ops, and we know it's going to open. So at that point, we'd rather be brutally honest and show people how to finish the procedure when they're tired, right? Because you may be done, clocked out in your head, but you still got to make it to the 10th step.
Yep. Great stuff. Great stuff. Yes. Incision line opening seems to be a very common cause for failure and distress in post-ops. But yeah, guys, thank you so much. Dan, I can tell that you're still at the Institute. I want to let you get back into surgery. Dune, I know that your lunch is over, so I'm going to let you get back as well. Thank you guys so much for indulging me and let me bother you in the middle of the day. Can't wait to see you guys in person again, and I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, nice. Appreciate it, man. I want to make one more announcement.
Yes.
Hang tight for everyone who has been contacting me about oral and IV sedation. The curriculum is written by an actual anesthesiologist who is my brother, so I'm biased, but he's insanely smart and good at what he does. And he's written a beautiful curriculum. And now we're going to start rolling out our dates for 2023. So everyone who's been private messaging me and calling me and asking about anesthesia, it's coming down the pipeline.
Can't wait. I'm going to be one of the first people in line to attend that class, and appreciate you putting that together. Dan and Tahir, can't thank you enough. You guys are the best. We'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.
This episode is being brought to you by Large Practice Sales. Large Practice Sales helps doctors of all ages and specialties monetize a part of their practice with a silent partner. How does it work? National groups purchase between 51% to 90% of a practice for cash up front, and the doctor remains an owner leading their practice under their brand, team, and strategy. Doctors benefit from the resources of a larger partner to grow bigger, faster, and more profitably. Contact Large Practice Sales, or LPS, today to confidentially discover your practice's value in an IDSO partnership at no cost without obligation. Just call 844-976-5332. That's 844-976-5332. Or visit largepracticesales.com/dentalpreneur. And that wraps it up for another episode of the Dentalpreneur Podcast. Look forward to reconnecting on the next episode.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Dentalpreneur Podcast. Check out TrueDentalSuccess.com for full recaps of every show, a schedule of our live events, free video tutorials, and a whole host of practice building resources.